Good evening, everyone, and welcome to COVID Crash 44. That's right, I've dropped the cast, brought in the crash to document the crash that we are going through or about to go through from the whole COVID situation. It is April 21st, 2020. We have an exciting show for you today, a little bit different. Instead of going over stats and some updates, we are going to be talking to Davis Aurini. He is a dissident thinker, and he has some very interesting opinions and insights into the current situation and society in general. So I think you guys will really enjoy it. Let's do some shout outs. Shout out to Jackson, Terry McLean, the Glitch Doctor, Gymnasium, producer Dave and his fluffy buddy Odell. Shout out to Julia, superfans Dwayne and Charlene, all the folks in Davyton, and special friend of the show, Lisa. Shout out to our floor director, Ivan. Hit me, Ivan.
Oh, yeah.
He also makes up the studio audience. And a big shout out to our sponsor, Athletic Alliance, makers of HydroPro, hydrolyzed protein, and Athletic Alliance Advanced Nootropic, which I pound all the time because it keeps me sharp and focused. Although I am out right now, but I get the same effect, more or less, from the pre-workout drink Havoc 137. And a super big shout out to Davis Aurini and his dog, Cassie. Thanks for joining us, guys. Cassie, you were a little bit pushy, but hey, that's okay. You're a dog. Quarantine's tough on dogs. I get it. I know. So without any further delay, let's get into the show. Hey, welcome to the COVID Crash. Davis Aurini, did I say that right?
You got it right.
Do you have a basic introduction for yourself?
Oh, yeah. I guess, I've been writing online for, 10 years now, something like that. At my website, starestheworld.com. I was on YouTube until one of three groups on the right wing decided to flag my channel and get me kicked off, which is fine. The right wing has become nothing but purity spiraling and bum fights on the internet, so that's fine. I guess Catholic. My politics come from the 15th century, so I can lovingly step outside of the current political order and just hate everybody. And
that's kind of useful at this time, isn't it?
Oh my God, there are no good guys out there, and that's one of the things that if you insist on picking one of the outfits, red team or blue team, you're going to be disappointed either way, right? And you're going to get involved in a whole bunch of struggles that have nothing to do with you and nothing to do with God.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no upside to just choosing a banner and standing under it, is there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're in late stage democracy, and in late stage democracy, statesmen are replaced with actors and bureaucrats. So you get people that are really good at saying what you want them to say, or appeasing special interest groups and giving them social status which is unearned, as opposed to people that can lead you out of a wet paper bag.
Well, you know what? It's interesting that you say that, because when this whole lockdown thing started, have you watched any of Justin Trudeau's morning briefings?
You know what? I actually caught 30 seconds. And I normally don't watch videos of these people, right? Like earlier today, I accidentally watched some video of Susan Wojcicki, the Twitter person, right, or the Facebook person, or the whatever social media person she is. And I'm like, good Lord, I should play this video when my dog misbehaves. The vocal fry was beyond this earth. It's like, women should not sound like that. And same thing, when I caught a brief clip of Trudeau speaking, I was just, I had to shut it off and pray for a while. It was just absolutely horrific. That's not a human being. That's not beautiful and melodious voices. Like, who voted for this weird beard-wearing drama teacher? It's ugh.
Well, yeah.
I'm kind of familiar with what he said, though. Usually, I just read the articles.
Well, I've been watching him right from the beginning just to kind of stay up to date on what they're doing, and he's kind of morphed. Well, I wouldn't even say he's morphed, but I mean, he comes across to me just as almost like a guidance counselor. He's saying the same things over and over again. Like, we have your back. we are here to support you. And it's
No, you
really just this
don't.
feminized, it's just a very feminized kind of soft, supportive message with no real substance at all.
Yeah, you know what? I am sick of it's apparently the official stance. Like, you know, that there's that clip going around of journalists on TV all reporting the exact same story word for word, and it just kept clipping from one TV station to another.
Yeah.
And so that's what happens. Okay, we have centralized PR firms that customize the message. The president has a speechwriter, et cetera, et cetera. And so the line for the COVID thing is, "We're in this together." No, we aren't.
Well, are the banks in it with us?
Yeah, the banks. Bank shows up. Can I have $50 million? Yeah, LOL. Money printer goes brr. Hey,
Yeah.
can I have $200? I can't afford food. Money printer broken.
Yeah, it's really kind of insane. And one of the things I noticed is, you know, about a week ago, Trudeau came on and he spoke about veterans and the sacrifices they made at Vimy Ridge. And he was comparing it to our current situation. And I thought, if that was comparable to the current situation, wouldn't we actually be going out and braving the virus and doing that rather than,
during the London bombing, you could still go out and buy a pack of fags and a newspaper.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought, wow, this is really indicative of just kind of the softness that our culture has, come to embrace now, right?
The weakness of people out there, the effeminacy of them, which is that's a theological term. Effeminacy in the theological sense means addiction to pleasure. One of the things that's really blowing me away, because honestly, this doesn't upset me. What, locked up at home? Okay, I got a little bit antsy after a few weeks. I actually started locking up back in January because I was actually paying attention to what was going on, and something weird happened in Wuhan. So I've been locked up since January, more or less, walking the dog occasionally, but that's it. And everybody else, 2 weeks of lockdown, and they're going nuts because there's no sports ball, because they can't go to the mall and fill the gaping hole in their soul by just cramming consumer goods in it. Like, come on, guys. Come on. Like, we have grounds to be very upset about this because they are destroying our livelihoods. All right. What's going on with the price of oil right now? It's, I wouldn't say terrifying because I'm not afraid, but it's not good.
No,
and
it's definitely paradigm changing, right? Like something's going to come from it.
But that's not what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing is the greatest anger is over the lack of pleasure, right? It's like we are just a soft, effeminate people that we need our sports ball, we need our lattes, we need all of this. Whereas myself, my big adventure is, once in a while, I'll take the dog out and go for coffee, bring a book with me, sit out on a patio. Like that's my big consumer spending event.
Yeah, well, it's sad. I've actually come to recognize that in myself. Like, I mean, I've been sort of anti-globalism, and now I've realized that how much my industry and my business, how globalist it actually has become. And I've recognized that in myself as well, that, I get so antsy because I'm a consumer. I'm conditioned to be a consumer, right? If I'm not spending my time consuming something, then I'm stuck. I'm kind of coming out of it now, though, I'll be honest.
Well, we're all that to a degree. And the difference is, if you recognize you're going through withdrawal from something that was bad for you, or that you were maybe overindulging in a little bit, because there is nothing wrong. Good. You know what? I was actually frustrated the other day because I was going to go buy a new pair of jeans, which is pretty exciting for me. And they've got you can't try on jeans at the store right now. It's ridiculous. So I was a little bit,
yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with getting a new suit, buying a pair of jeans, going for a cup of coffee, and enjoying it. There's nothing wrong with that. And we've kind of gone completely cold turkey on all of that. But it's one thing to recognize you're going cold turkey and you're a little bit antsy, but you get over it, versus a lot of the upset that we're seeing.
Yeah, it's almost like consumption has become a religion or an ideology, in that even relationships are reduced to swiping, and everything basically is built on, like you said, sensual pleasures or instant gratification, right?
Yeah, everything has been boiled down to that, and that's like when we talk about the globalism. I don't know if that's actually the best term for it, because like the globalist economy really started to kick into gear around the 1400s, and the global economy is what has created this incredibly advanced lifestyle to the point where, like, I don't want to tempt God or anything, but if we can maintain this, if we can maintain the sewer systems, I think we might have defeated plagues. I don't think we'll ever have a plague again, because it's not medicine that saves you from the plague. It's washing your hands and having clean drinking water. So there's all these good things of globalism. What's bad about globalism, it's not so much the global supply chain, although we should have slightly more robust, slightly more rugged supply chains in our own countries. It's the focus on disposability and consumerism. And I don't know.
Almost for the sake of consumerism, right?
Exactly. It's to keep yourself constantly distracted, constantly medicated, constantly moving, and focusing on the velocity of money rather than the quality of production.
Do you think you can have that consumerism without liberalism, or liberalism without consumerism? Are those two linked?
You know what the whole modern paradigm is. So, I mean, like, let's look at the right wing for a moment here. The right wing have their own shibboleths, right? And it's, now as Canadians, we can look at the American right wing, and it's a little bit easier for us to notice it.
It's more obvious.
Yeah, whereas if you're in the United States, it's like a fish in water. It doesn't notice the water.
Yeah.
And so the right wing in the United States is just as much about consumerism, just as much about, I party hard on Saturday, I go to church on Sunday. It's like, well, maybe you should find a better life balance, right? Maybe you should actually, follow Christ as opposed to just go to church. But but yeah, there's the same consumerism is on the right. And the criticism that the left will make of the Republican Party, that they support corporations, I'd say that's a fairly apt criticism. And it's this desire to, well, on the extreme side, the honey boo boo lifestyle, right? Just always buying more junk food from Walmart.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because we've almost seen, I guess, sort of a synthesis of one extreme of the right wing, which is sort of unfettered corporatism, maybe, right? And sort of an extreme on the left, which, doesn't so much protect the worker anymore. It's all just about, human rights and refugees and immigration and that sort of thing. And those two things have kind of combined almost to make a bank commercial, right?
Yeah. And both of them, both sides are just so obviously limiting ideologies, right? They're not a complete worldview.
Right.
It's really hard because the right is so much closer to being correct that it's criticizing them seems like nitpicking, and I guess it is nitpicking in a lot of ways. But it's still a very blind, arrogant. It's well, like if you look at American Christianity, it's a very cruel, condemnatory form of Christianity, right? It outgroups people. Instead of, I was watching a video quite some time ago where a gay guy was talking that he completely rejected Christ until he ran into a Catholic that didn't immediately start lecturing him and telling him he was going to hell and treating him out-group, but started talking to him like a human being, just another idiot here on idiot planet trying to live life and not suffer too much.
Right.
Like the right wing alienates all of these groups. It outgroups them, pushes them away. And so are you then surprised that all these groups go and form their own party and fight against you and try and undermine you?
Yeah,
It
kind of makes it impossible to build any sort of coalition on the right, doesn't it?
Well, and if you've got all these guys, pickup trucks, guns, my Bible, and they're running around, they're angry about a lot of stuff. do you want to lead that army? Do you want to embrace those values and be a leader and bring them to success? You know what? No, I don't really want to do that. Now, if I'm a shyster, if I'm a con man, and good Lord, America loves a con man, then, you know, absolutely, I can just get these guys to spin their wheels in a dirt track and get all their votes and get lots of power for myself and get lots of praise from them.
Get in on the grift, right?
Exactly.
One of the things I've noticed now with this this whole COVID is that, speaking of left and right, they seem to I don't know how you put it. The narrative seems to be metastasizing in that whatever justification that group had, they're seeing it in the whole COVID situation, right? Like, for example, you know, people on the right see this as a problem with immigration from China, for example. People of the left see this as justification for climate control, and you know, they're seeing opportunities to shut down movement in order to support the climate. Like, it's metastasizing, and it's each narrative is trying to kind of come out and sort of ride this COVID. Do you see
Right,
that?
and they're polarizing at the same time.
Quickly polarizing, yeah.
Like one of the things that's really bothering me on the right is how many people are jumping onto the anti-Chinese sentiment. Listen, you and I live in Canada. We know who controls the government, and the puppet is in Ottawa, but the guy pulling the strings is over in Beijing. You and I know perfectly well that the Chinese government are not nice people, that the Maoist revolution absolutely destroyed Chinese culture, and it kind of descended into second world category, because there are so many issues in China, and you do not want to do business with Chinese companies unless if you really know what you're doing, because you are going to get plagued. There are so many issues with China. You and I know that, right? But there's all this Chinese, anti-Chinese rhetoric I'm seeing, like calling it the Chinese virus. How does that benefit us? How does that, what does that mean? Okay, now, either the virus was a complete fluke, and that's not China's fault. I mean, you could blame it on the wet markets, but they've got wet markets in Africa, they've got wet markets in Korea, they've got them all over the bloody world. Okay, I'm sure we have some here in Canada as well. So it's a random virus. It's not like China intentionally, they mishandled it. So did our government, right? Or it's a lab-grown virus, which is what I suspect. But guess what? We were growing the exact same viruses, working with the Americans and the Chinese. All three of us were working on creating these deadly viruses because why not? There's no God. Let's create a super weapon. So why is it the Chinese virus? It started in China. But like, what does calling it the Chinese? All this does is it takes the stupid people. It's like they all point at China as the enemy. You know, we've always been at war with East Asia. Meanwhile, China's doing the same thing. China was welding people into their own houses. The videos I've seen from China, the #1 treatment for the coronavirus seems to be bullets. Okay, something crazy went down in Wuhan, but they don't want the American big asshole. So now you got both countries blaming each other for, like, I don't know what the reason is. Nobody's explained where the blame comes in, but they're blaming each other, calling each other assholes, and their citizens just go along with it. It's like, you're falling for it, son. You're falling for it.
Well, there's two things that I find really kind of, I guess, annoying, I would say. Number one, I mean, okay. Let's say it did originate in China, and I agree with you. I think it came out of a lab in there unintentionally, probably. But
it also could have been, we had the military games right before it was detected. It could have been the Americans putting it there.
Yeah, I mean, there's like possibilities. The whole wet market thing, I mean, there's just as many wet markets, I think, in Vietnam and Thailand and Laos. And I mean, doesn't seem to be anything coming out of there. But
let me just interrupt briefly. If it came out of Thailand, renowned for hookers and transsexuals, would we be hearing a lot of anti-Thailand rhetoric? I don't think we would.
No, I don't think so. I think, I think China's kind of the acceptable for the 2 minutes hate right now, right? You know, I mean, just the way white supremacists were 6 months ago and Islamic terrorists were, you know, maybe 10 years ago, right? There always seems to be a group that the media kind of, you know, it's acceptable to throw some criticism, not too much, but some, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's kind of where China falls into now. And I mean, you know, I mean, obviously blaming the Chinese people themselves is a little, you know, it's a little ridiculous, right? I mean, they have about as much control over what happens over there as the rest of us do.
Well, and the liberals have just been, again, I don't follow. The funny is how quickly the narrative keeps changing with this one.
Yeah, it's a roller coaster.
Like gay marriage, it's like if you paid attention. So like when we were growing up, everybody was officially against gay marriage, but we kept hearing all the Hollywood TV shows. It's like, why can't they get married? They just want equality. And so you had this slow build up, and then boom, everybody supports gay marriage. Mm-hmm. So you could see it. It was consistent. It was in one direction. Whereas with this, everybody keeps changing their minds. Don't wear masks. Wear masks. You know, stop crowd from China. No, that's racist. Have the parade in New York, says Pelosi. No, don't have parade, says Pelosi.
Well, what do you think is going to come out of this? I mean, you know, there's no doubt that probably the government sees this as opportunities to test certain things out on the population, and you know what they'll put up with, or maybe not, right? Do you think we're just going to be business as normal, you know, 2 months from now, or do you think there's permanent changes?
Oh, there are absolutely, like, this is traumatic, right? Not as maybe as traumatic as it could have been. Like maybe a little bit more trauma. Maybe if people were seeing babies walking on the ceiling with their heads spinning around, we'd be a little better off. Maybe we need some trauma.
You know what? Right? That's what I thought after 9/11, though. And I thought, wow, everything's going to be different. And then really nothing was different. You know, the official message was, you know, keep buying products to keep the country going. And, you know,
don't think, consume.
Yeah.
Buy new product.
Yeah. Consume your way out of it and take your shoes off at the airport. And that's really about all that changed, right?
Well,
I mean, there's a few.
No.
I mean, that they don't affect the average person a whole lot.
Come here. What do you want? What do you want?
Well, that's a big dog.
Oh, yeah, this is a space dog. She's being ornery. She wants outside. We can do that after the live stream, my honey. She's growling at me right now because she's low quality.
Yikes.
But actually, you know what? That's part of what there is going to be changes. The same way 9/11 inducted the Patriot Act. But then nothing changed. We just started more pointless, like not even real wars, okay?
Yeah.
They're real if you were over there, right? If you lost your legs there, they're real. But no, not to the rest of us. You know, we're still consuming product.
So coming out of this, do you do you think there's a game plan that's evolving right now? Because I mean, I'm sure the government doesn't want the situation that they're in. I mean, maybe they're adjusting to it. Maybe they're opportunistic in some of the things that they see right now. But I mean, they couldn't have wanted, you know, an economic downturn of this nature, right? Trump or Trudeau, neither of them could have wanted that.
I'll tell you what I think. And this is total conspiracy theory, but you know, it fits the facts. I could be wrong on this, but I think this was an engineered virus. I think it was released because the economic system is completely unsustainable. It's been held together with Band-Aids and bubble gum since 2008. And it's like a top that's starting to wobble. You know it's going to fall over, but you don't quite know when it's going to fall over. And I think it was an engineered collapse. I suspect what happened is that it was a really nasty virus at first, but it mutated faster than they expected into harmlessness. And so it hit Wuhan. It was terrible. It hit Iran, which, I mean, how'd it get to Iran? Well, I could suspect a few things. It hits Iran, it's terrible. Hits Italy, where they also had a lab. It's terrible. But everywhere else, it's not even a particularly bad flu. We've had worse flus than this thing. And so I think it was engineer a collapse, take out the population, traumatize people so that, right, like if you'd lost 3 family members and there were people going up and down the street in yellow biohazard suits, I wouldn't have much of a problem with that.
No.
But then it mutated too fast. And so now it's harmless. And so now they're trying to push this agenda that they had waiting in the wings, but it makes no sense. And I actually think it was, well, see, when you talk about the left and the right, you're talking about the groups behind the left and the right, who are just 2 sides of another. We won't name them specifically. I think it was both of them working together on this. In fact, and the reason that took off, and China's done a lot to upset these groups recently. China was completely going along with them, but it turned out China was just stealing their playbook, and now they're going against them. So yeah, they hit China first. It was supposed to hit the rest of us. But now that it was primarily the left side of it orchestrating it, and so now the right side, I'm getting the distinct impression that Donald Trump would have been happy to go along with this thing, right? He would have been happy. Like, he'd say, no, we must stop the flights, but then he'd allow the resistance. But I think it's got to the point where the right is saying that, you know what, no, this collapse ain't going to work. We need to back off and get the economy started again. Because if people were dying, that would be totally different. But when people are at home and healthy and pretty ticked off, no, better not collapse things yet.
Well, no, and I mean, I don't think I've ever been in a situation in my life. Well, I know I haven't ever been in a situation in my life where I simultaneously feel like I'm overreacting and underreacting at the same time. I mean, if we look at the total fatalities across all of Western Canada, and what's the population of Western Canada? Probably, what, 10 or 11 million, 10 million?
That sounds about right. They're what, tripled, 55 people, 500 people, something like that?
There's about 150 people have died across Western Canada. And so for that, an entire economy has been hobbled, if not shut down, for a month, which seems like an incredible overreaction to me. But then I think, okay, well, maybe they know something that we don't know. Maybe they're sitting on information and they know that this is going to get much worse because they do know that it was bioengineered. Or maybe it's just a case of herd hysteria, right? Every government seems to be taking the same measures pretty much that almost every other government is taking as well.
Well, from everything I've seen, the virus peaked 3 weeks ago. So let me just run through this quickly. There's 3 moving parts, so about 90% of the population can't seem to figure this out. But so the whole flatten the curve. Thing is that this is a highly infectious disease. We know from that cruise ship that in 4 days, 20% of the people on there were infected from one person. Mm-hmm. It's very highly infectious. Coronaviruses typically are very infectious. They move rapidly through a population.
Highly contagious.
And so the worry is with the curve. Now, the area under the curve stays the same. The same number of people get infected. But if left to its own devices, we have a pointy curve. Now, if the line of hospital beds is right here, then all of these people at the peak are not getting good treatment. And then other people that go to the hospital aren't getting good treatment. So we don't want that. That's where it becomes
overwhelming the medical system, yeah.
So we flatten the curve to keep the medical system fine. Well, the nurses are so bored that they're acting disgracefully and posting dancing videos to rap songs. And we've already flattened that curve. Trudeau has acknowledged a week ago that we flattened the curve. We are on the other side. We've got herd immunity at this point. It's happened. There is no reason whatsoever. There's not going to be a second peak, right? Unless if they have some information they're not telling us, and I'm pretty sure they don't. Unless if it's somehow mutating faster and it's going to hit us. No, it's not going to hit us again. We didn't stop it. This thing is so highly infectious. Everybody, like by isolating, you might cut your human interaction by 75%, but not by 100%. You're still going to the grocery store. You're still getting your mail. You have these interactions. It slows down the infection. It does not stop it or even reduce the numbers of infected. So we've hit herd immunity.
Well, one of the I recently read, actually yesterday, that in California, they believe that hundreds of thousands of people have been infected by this, just based on the testing that they've been doing. And I mean, I take that as good news because that means they've been infected, they were asymptomatic, or the symptoms were mild. And like you say, the herd immunity is in effect, right?
Mm-hmm. There's also studies of sewage treatment plants where they're detecting so many, leavings of the virus that it tells them that there's way more infected than we have records for. Which again, it makes sense. If you got hit mildly by this thing, we know the hospitals are overwhelmed and we know the hospitals are dangerous. So if you just have a mild little flu, you're not going to get tested. You're not going to go to the hospital.
No, you'll wait until the symptoms are severe, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, yeah, we know a lot of people have underlying conditions or they're extremely old and those sorts of things as well, right?
Yeah, and that's the other thing. The death rate, it's exactly what you expect. All right, kids, adults, perfectly safe from it, unless you have underlying conditions. And even then, even if you have comorbidities, good friend of mine, he had a comorbidity. He got hit with this virus, and it was brutal. Okay, really knocked him on his butt for a week, but he recovered because he's in his 40s. He's not old yet. It's when you have a bunch of comorbidities, this is the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Right.
What?
All right, I got one more question for you, then I'll let your dog out, okay? So, how do you see things playing out over the next month, 3 months, 4 months, the next 6 months, let's say?
The number one thing to remember for 2020 is do not be afraid. Okay? That if there's one message, that's the important thing. Now, if you like the overreaction on the left and the right, by the way, the left, demanding that everybody wear masks and be paranoid, the right having all these really angry protests, it's fear on both sides. So if people aren't afraid, it's when people are afraid, they're easy to manipulate. Don't be afraid, just a virus. We're an incredibly wealthy society. Food is not going to get interrupted. Our businesses, like what's happened to our businesses sucks, man. You might not get a new F-350 next year, all right? But it's just a truck. Don't be afraid. We're all going to be okay. That said, I think and this frustrates me, I would really like if people would wake up to the fact they don't need all this material pleasure. Wake up to the fact that, guess what, our leaders are a bunch of clowns. Our prime minister is a part-time drama teacher. Here in Calgary, we've got an overweight bisexual Muslim for mayor. It's like these people have no idea what they're doing. The hospital administrators got there by kissing ass. The high levels of the military officers got there by kissing ass. The bureaucrats got there by pushing out anybody who is competent at their job. Our society is run by midwits that have no clue what they're doing. And Bill Gates is one of the smartest out there. And what his IQ is like 125 or something, maybe? Mm-hmm. Maybe. He's no Wozniak. Wozniak was a genius. Bill Gates is just a shyster. These people are morons. Can we acknowledge this? I think, though, what's going to happen is people are just going to keep muddling on. It's this weird thing where, thanks to technology, we are powerful enough that we can just be morons and we don't have to really pay any consequences for it.
So you see no permanent structural changes like a refocus on manufacturing within the country, or a reduction in mass migration, or just a reduction in global travel, or other protocols with regards to viruses and stuff like that going forward, or pushes for universal basic income? Like, do you see any major structural changes coming out of this?
I see a lot of minor structural changes, right? Again, going back to 9/11, the Patriot Act was absolutely terrible, absolutely shredded the Constitution. but our lives didn't really change, did they?
No.
And the same thing with this. Yeah, they're going to be pushing vaccines more often, but there's enough of us that will not take the vaccine, and they want our business down in Las Vegas. I don't expect that. Like, I don't see the worst case scenario or the best case scenario happening. I see some weird, there's going to be a lot of e-girls that can't find anybody to support them. They're just muddling on. Humanity's just going to keep muddling on, and
so more or less back to normal in a few months, you're saying?
Yeah, a new normal, but it's not going to be too different from the old normal. And we're probably going to see a little bit more UBI type things, more EI, like that sort of stuff, which, first of all, we can afford it. Second of all, the whole economic system's a clown show anyway, where digital products completely mess up the fiat currency system. Because like, you buy 1950s, you buy a truck, right? Well, that money goes to the people that made the truck, and they go and buy more stuff. It accelerates the economy. Welcome to 2020. You buy $4 horse armor from Bethesda, and Bethesda has $4. They don't spend it on anything, right? You buy Microsoft Windows. It takes a team of 50, maybe 500 guys to make the software product, and then they just sell it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so all this money just keeps disappearing into these giant stagnant ponds where it does absolutely nothing. And again, we have children in charge. We have absolute fools in charge. You and I, in a weekend, could come up with a better economic system. And we're not even, like, I'm not even an economist, not really.
Well,
we could do a better job than these people in a weekend while we were drunk. But nobody's going to ask us for help.
You know what? I will say this. Like, I've run several businesses, and I was right about the wage subsidy. I said they should do that rather than the EI right from the get-go. And I'll say this about Trudeau as well. You know, he's a drama teacher, but he flubs his lines all the time, and
it's not a very good one.
No, he's not even good at that. And he's done about 21 press conferences or thereabouts, and he's been late for every single one.
That's so disrespectful.
It's just, it's incredible, right? Like, dude, everybody's writing your stuff for you. You're saying the same things. At least get out there when you're supposed to be out, right?
You know what? I've been advocating for a long time now that we're entering a 400-year dark age. These seem to happen every 1,200 years, going back to the Bronze Age collapse, maybe even before that. So, Bronze Age collapse. It absolutely destroyed civilization. Populations reduced incredibly.
And I mean, that was built up through, I guess, a sort of a globalism of that period as well, though, wasn't it? You had a lot of interdependent economies, right?
But that's the thing. It was, yeah, oh, absolutely. But it was terrible. People starved. Mm-hmm. Then you get the Roman collapse. And with the collapse of Rome, it was 400 years of barbarism, right? No law and order. But technology kept improving. People were still reading. You could still find medical doctors. It's just that there wasn't much law and order, so trade really suffered.
Yeah.
And then this dark age, we've got literacy, we've got computers, we've got... this dark age is not going to be that bad to go through.
It won't
it's just going to be. It's just going to be a lot of genetic dead-ends turning their sons into daughters to dance at gay sex clubs. It's going to be kind of a depressing one.
I think I'd rather face the sea peoples.
Well, oh man, at least there's honor in that one.
Yeah. Well, okay. One last question. We're very clearly, I would say, in a period of civilizational decline. I mean, maybe not technologically or with some other things, but I think, in terms of just the energy and the dynamicism or the zeitgeist of a civilization, I think we're very clearly in a decline right now. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so how do people keep from being demoralized while you're living in a decline, right?
Listen, civilizations die, men live on. Right? Now, you should only be depressed about the civilizational decline if if you are part of the civilization. If here's the works of Aristotle aren't going anywhere. We're still going to have those. We're still going to have classical music. We are still going to have saxophones. We're still going to have classic car. Like, we're going to have all this stuff. Like, all of the good parts of civilization are still going to be there. It's just that most people, instead of buying a DeLorean, they're going to be buying a Honda Civic, for crying out loud, right? Most people are going to be dressing like an extra from Idiocracy. Most people are going to choose that.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe
let them do that.
Sorry?
Let them do it. Let the baby have its bottle.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe if if we've reached the point in our civilization where, you know, transgender story hour and big gulps represent the pinnacle, then maybe a decline is in order, right? And maybe it's a good thing.
And that's the thing. You and me, like, you're a family man. You've got we're gonna still be here, right? I'm still gonna have my fancy stand-up ashtray right here. We're still going to have all of that. It's just that other people aren't going to choose that. So there's no us, is what I guess I'm saying.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, I will let you sign off here and take what's your dog's name?
Cassie, or Space Dog is what she's called on the internet. Can you hear her whining?
Yeah. Well, she sounds like she's had enough of the lockdown, right? Enough quarantine.
Yeah. You need outside, my girly. I better get her out. Thanks, man. It was an absolute pleasure being on.
Awesome, Davis. Okay. Hopefully we'll talk again, right?
All righty. I'll see ya.
See ya.